Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Overfilled, the podcast, your favorite scleral lens podcast in existence. It's been a little while since Jamie's been here, but the three of us are back together again, and we just hope today's topic is helpful. And so we're going to start off as we always do before we get into talking scleral lenses. We're going to talk about what overfills us in life. We've had a lot of good stuff lately. So, Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's overfilling you?
Sure. I'll have you throw up my picture I uploaded. So this was my first year having students, which was awesome. And I'm really, really excited that my student here, Megan, this is her last day today. I'm going to miss her a lot. She's going to graduate next Friday from IU. It's just been really great to be able to teach at the office, and my patients are all super supportive of students and excited to hear about their journey. So I'm just overfilled with happiness that they're moving on. And Jason had always said before too, it's like when you do things, it's kind of like a ripple effect, right? So you can only affect, your patients in your practice, but if you can help a student, to fit scleral lenses better or whatever you're going to teach them, and then they move on to wherever they're going to live in the country, they can help patients there too. So it's kind of like a cool thing to think about, to helping more and more people that aren't directly in your local community. So I was super excited about that. So today's her last day. And then I was telling my two besties here, I'm looking at my schedule next week without a student, like, how am I going to do this now? It's fine. So I was really happy, and I get more students again next year in the third and fourth quarter. So it was a really fun, overfilled year with the IU students. And then the other thing that the reason why we were gone the last couple weeks is Brooke and I went to Poland.
Yeah.
And here's a picture of us teaching at the University of Warsaw. So again, like Brooke and I, like all three of us obviously love teaching, right? So this was the University of Warsaw master's students in optometry. What I thought was really interesting, if you look really close in the picture, is that it was all women except one guy.
One guy. Yep. And he showed up late.
Yes, he showed up late, and that's okay. Okay, no shame if you're listening.
Love you all. I hope some of you watch this video.
No shame if you're listening. So funny. But I thought that was really cool, especially just in our travels over there. I feel like there's a lot more male optometrists in Europe, or maybe that's just a misconception from what my experience was. But it's kind of cool seeing the industry shift and being able to teach somewhere outside the U.S. And I just love being there.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really loved spending time in Warsaw, and we also spent some time in Krakow too at their optometria is what it's called, and it's a kind of a general optometry meeting. They cover all aspects, and got to see our good friend Afe again. So Afe was there as well, and so that was fun. So we did some workshops at that meeting on the contact lens side for both Ortho-K and scleral lenses. And then we traveled to the University of Warsaw for a Zenlens workshop. And the students were just as excited as any other scleral lens workshop. They were all in. They were laughing as they practiced putting lenses on each other. They had great tech, the same tech we use to image lenses, do their topographies. So it was awesome. They were just a blast to work with. Super great practice lanes to work in. Like, they had great slit lamps. So it was really fun.
Nice.
Yep.
Do you have anything else that's overfilling you, Brooke?
The recent trips was a big part of our recent experiences. But my current resident, Jamie Nelson, she took a position within Vance Thompson Vision. So our Iowa site, Cedar Rapids, they are hiring their first optometrist. So Jamie will be going there to kind of lead and kick off optometry with Vance Thompson Vision in Cedar Rapids. And I know she's going to do awesome. And I'm just so proud of her. I was telling Jason a couple weeks ago that April is like the best month for residents because they're competent, they're confident, they're cruising. And, the questions they ask are like amazingly like elevated and challenging questions. But they don't have senioritis just yet. They're still like in it, they're still working hard. And, I know with my previous residents, again, like there does get to a point where it's like, okay, like what's next in my life? Like I got to find a place to live. I got to find a job, I'm moving and those types of things. And that does emotionally wear on them. So like May and June get a little bit tougher. They just want to get through their day so that they can get that other stuff done, where April, they're not quite there yet. So I love April, and it was a good one with Dr. Jamie.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so there's your ripple effect. I mean, think about all those people in Iowa now that are going to have better eye care.
I hope so.
Because of her, because of you. So you now think about your reach now is into Eastern Iowa already.
Yes. So that's great. Yeah. And my previous resident, Dr. Laura Holtz, she recently joined the University of Nebraska Medical School in their ophthalmology department. And she'll be doing some scleral lens fittings there as well. So just super proud of these young docs.
Awesome. Well, my Overfilled is nothing quite so rewarding or fulfilling. But
you're so lame.
Yeah. For those of you who are sports fans who happen to know this is NHL and NBA playoff time, both
Minnesota
and the Timberwolves advanced last night, and so I was so fired up watching the games last night. So I'm a big Minnesota sports fan still, even though I'm not there anymore. I was for most of my life, and all the Minnesota teams are my teams, and both the Wild and the Timberwolves won last night to advance to the next round of the playoffs.
And the Timberwolves were down some good players.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, sorry, Dallas, sorry, Denver, you guys stink. But now I get to watch more playoff sports for at least another couple weeks.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, on to scleral lenses. Today we're going to talk about HOA correction. And we talked a little bit about this before, but we're going to talk more specifically, I guess, maybe about just some tips, tricks. How do you know if someone's a good candidate or not a good candidate, et cetera? Where should we be at with our fits before we take that next step into HOA correction? So obviously we would love a good fit as a primary starting point. What are the attributes of a good fit that are necessary to move into adding HOA correction to a lens?
Yeah. So first off, I want to add in that the reason this topic came up was on the Scleral Lens Fitters Facebook forum. Nate Schramm, who's a big HOA guy in the industry, was like, I want to know about the best pearls for Ovitz with their X-Wave system and Zenlens. And I was like, well, duh, who better to talk to than the three of us about
right?
And
so Nate, if you're not listening to this,
you're
missing out.
I'll make sure that I share it with you, Nate. Yeah. But that was where it came from. He had like a funny little picture with him and his cats about looking for pearls. And so we had a little chuckle at that image. And so Nate, this one's for you, looking for all those Zenlens and Ovitz HOA best practices.
Yeah.
I think for me, the most important thing is having obviously your stable lens, because if that lens is going to keep rotating, it's going to make you chase your tail with your HOA correction. And then you're wondering, is it an HOA issue? Is it the design? Is it the fact that the lens isn't stable? So just really making sure that lens rotates back to its position. I think Jason had a really cool image of it, a video. I don't know if you're going to show that now or later, but
sure.
Like if you can spin that lens and have it come back to the same exact rotation, that's ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want it to be like getting like stuck in different meridians depending on how they put that lens in their eye that day. I feel like my most challenging cases have actually been my patients that are very rotationally symmetric, where they almost like don't have enough toricity to like lock in stability.
Yes,
those have been way more complex. Those are the hardest patients fit in HOA when their eye is almost like too perfect.
Well,
like
you can't. I mean, you just can't fit them. You can't. And here's the thing too with the rotation is we all understand how, like when we just fit a simple toric lens, like a soft toric on a patient, and we correct their cylinder, if the lens rotates too much, it doesn't work. Right. Well, this is even. We think about the difference between the toricity on a soft toric, for example, and the need for that to be rotationally stable and consistent. And then you think about, instead of having a cylinder on the lens, put a spot of HOA correction on the front. It's even more critical that that lens is rotationally stable than it is for a soft toric. So it's like the same concept, but even twice as important for these things to be that rotationally stable.
Yeah, I would agree that I had recently had a guy who was post LASIK, and he was just, had some drift and also presbyopia. So he was looking for, he just wanted that next best thing. And he had a spherical haptic, and it was really hard to I tried to induce toricity or I tried to add a toric haptic in or bielevation just to see if I could get him something. And it was really challenging. I think I ended up finding a little bit, but when I first added it in, it was way too tight in the meridian that I added the toricity in. And so that's a challenge. And thankfully, in a lot of these eyes, between the dual sag with the bielevation and just these awesome, quadrant specific or toric haptics that we can utilize, the more toricity, the better, because it locks into place and has even less ability to move. And so I'm more likely to get moving on the HOA aspect of the lens as soon as I know the rotation is predictable. I know they say you need to have your fit perfect and then move into the HOA correction, but nobody's scolded me yet for continuing to make little haptic changes when I'm confident that my rotation is there. So I'm going to do that because it's been helping me get to an endpoint faster. So as soon as rotational stability is there, that's when I start moving forward.
So
I don't know if that's just a Zenlens specific thing or not, because I found that too, that I can change the haptic just a little bit and it does not change rotation. And it might be because we have bielevation. The bielevation drives the rotation. Other lens designs, though, I don't know. If you're making those tiny changes, it might throw off your how that lens is stable. So that might be more of a Zenlens specific thing, because I have found that as well.
If your lens has dual sag, then okay. If it doesn't, then the haptic changes will change rotation.
How much toricity do you feel is the minimum you'd need in a lens to proceed with HOA correction?
So,
at what point would you say, "Oh, I'm one step flat by one step steep"? That's not enough. So at what point, how many steps of difference between the meridians or whatever would you say is enough to feel like you can count on getting it rotationally stable?
So when I had that little, I actually ended up taking out all the toricity and doing as if I did a front toric power. And I just had them do
dual elliptical stabilization.
Yeah, that's it. And that was more stable than me trying to lock in 90 microns of toricity. You know what I mean? So for me, it was, once you get to that less than 100 microns, I just take it out and make it, kind of almost like you're doing a front toric power only, and either make it a prism or dual. That was actually a lot more stable than me trying to lock in at such a minimal amount of toricity in the haptic.
Yeah. And that's what the Zenlens would do if you were doing a multifocal, since it's a decentered optic and you had a spherical chamber. So they would add on that, it's kind of like a prism ballast in a way, for lack of better words, but that's what they use, where it balances on the lower lid and keeps it nice and rotationally stable. So if you did have a spherical haptic, you can still do it. I suppose you would just request it when you order in the reference dots, add in dual elliptical stabilization, since I have a spherical chamber and haptic. But getting back to your question, Jason, I think I would be okay with 150 microns somewhere, if it was in the haptic, the chamber. I think that would be good enough. There's not a ton of lenses that are that low, but I think I would feel okay with that.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, I just recently had somebody who had 3 steps. They were flat 1 by steep 2, and it wasn't working.
Okay.
It wasn't
enough.
I mean, it was generally in the right area, but it was vacillating 10 or 15 degrees, which is not enough. The cutoff for this should be about 5 degrees to be acceptable. And so in that case, we're still working on it. The next step was to try to migrate that all into a bielevation instead of the edge, thinking by moving the toricity inward, you're going to get more of an effect theoretically, because you now have the full 90 microns, or in this case, we moved to 100 microns of bielevation. The full 100 microns of difference in the two meridians goes through the entire haptic. rather than when you're toric,
Mhm.
it increases through the haptic so that it's the full amount at the edge. There's no toricity at the beginning of the haptic. So you have a when you add toricity to just the haptic to the APS, you don't have any toricity at the inside, and it builds to the full amount at the outside. Whereas with bioelevation, you have the full amount at the inside and at the outside.
Yep.
So you've got more surface area that's toric with the bioelevation than you would with just a toric APS or haptic. And so I'm hoping that will work, that will add some stability by making it a bioelevation rather than just a toric APS.
And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Zenlens and bioelevation, basically what Jason just went through is that utilizing bioelevation plus the landing curves or the APS, it's like 2 points of stability rather than just one. So rather than utilizing the toricity at the edge of the lens by just manipulating the haptic, you're aligning to the corneal toricity or the limbal toricity and the lens edge toricity. And so there's 2 spots to stabilize the lens, which is an amazing way to stabilize a lens. Rotational stability in a Zenlens is not an issue for me. It is, especially when you got the bioelevation in there. It's just such a great part of the Zenlens technology.
I was going to ask you about the front toric thing, because I've never done a front toric only with a HOA lens.
I haven't either.
I have. Maybe I should do a poster about it. I'm the first one in the world to do it.
Do you because I've had front torics rotate 10 or 15 degrees one way or the other. Do you typically fit the lens first and verify that that's adequate before you order it with HOA optics, or would you normally go about fitting it in a front toric and knowing it's actually going to work? Because like I said, I've got patients who are in front torics and their lens is like 10 degrees one way or the other, which is kind of outside the tolerance. So would you order the lens first without the HOA optics and make sure that it's stable before you then order it with HOA, or how would you do that?
I mean, I just looked at the dotted lens. Yeah. So I still I didn't put the optics on it first and then retroactively change it. You know what I mean? So I looked at it with like all the dotted like behind your head there. So I think, part of the fitting process, I was kind of going along before I put optics on. Optics is last for me. So it was like, all right, I tried to put a little bit of toricity in there, and I just felt like I always measure the rotation of the dots every visit. And I was just noticing that I'm like, this just isn't stable being like a toric haptic. And so then I just said, well, send my next one as, a spherical. And they put it in there, and I just made sure it looked fine with the dots. This is like the same thing that you would do with your image that you had there, but with all the dotted lenses. And then I put the optics on it. So I don't know. I guess it's not any different. So I had good success that way with it, because I do feel like it's a pretty stable design. It's no different than if someone had a front toric power with a spherical haptic. You know what I mean? And the lens works fine that way. So
yeah, I think I would just request the dual elliptical stabilization in addition to the Ovitz reference dots. I'm assuming that's what you were getting to.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Then you can see if the rotation is, and then you order the HOA correction.
Yeah.
I think that's a good plan.
Because I just felt like that was more stable than what I was already doing, which was such a minimal amount of toricity in the haptic. And so that was way more stable. So we went with it. And I mean, it's not ideal. That's not the ideal candidate, but I have, for whatever reason, my practice is a magnet for people that really want Ovitz, and they do not care. They're like, I want this. So they are coming here. I don't present it to some of these people. It's like, I drove here from 2 hours. I want Ovitz. You're like, all right, well, you're not the best candidate because of XYZ. And so sometimes we still have to go with it. And it works most of the time.
Yeah. I do think it would probably be a little bit dependent upon what type of aberrations you're correcting.
Right.
If you were mainly correcting like spherical aberrations, I can see that working just fine, because then rotation is of much less consequence. I think if I was just correcting like a massive horizontal or vertical coma, I would be concerned about, again, even 5 or 8 degrees of rotation could really have a negative impact. So yeah.
Maybe I should write that case up. It's from like last summer. I had good results. It's from like last summer. Yeah. The other pearl I had though too just happened recently, where what I do a lot is direct ship the dotted lens, or I direct ship the dotted lens to the patient. That way they can wear it to the appointment, settled for a few hours. And I had a patient, he had been wearing it for like 12 hours or so, and it was really hard to get scans for my technician. And then I looked at his lens, and he just had a lot of like debris and junk on his lens from wearing it all day working. So we like put some artificial tears in, let them blink, recalibrate, and then took the Ovitz scan. That can really impact like your scan quality for sure. So just one thing, like you want it to be settled, but if it's on the eye for that long, you might want to put like an artificial tear in before you take the scan.
Well, and the truth is that if your lens is rotationally stable, which coming back after 12 hours, if the dot is where you want it to be, you could take it out,
right?
Put it back in, make sure the dot's in the right place again, and you could go ahead and scan it all over again, because, again, it's more, I think the reason for having it in for a while before you do it is probably to allow the lens to fully settle. But again, if we're talking about a lens that we feel confident in its repositioning, maybe having it in less is not that critical. So
I often do that, Jason. The patient will get their scan on the way in after letting the lens settle, and if I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is kind of, tear film's kind of junky or cloudy, I'll take it off, rinse it, put it back in, rescan, and as long as the rotation is at the same spot, I would agree that the HOAs don't change all that much. And you've presented data on like when you have a lens that's settled, if you take the lens off, put it back on, it's still in the same spot. It doesn't like have to resettle when the lens is off for 3 minutes to rinse and refill. So I have done that too, because I'd much rather have that like clean tear layer to measure those true HOAs versus those variable cloudy tear lenses.
Especially if you measure it first and then come back and measure it again after. I think you'll be able to tell if the quality of the redone image is a little better than the previous. You'll see on your Hartmann Shack display all the squares and the dots. You'll see a better quality probably of image, less red X's if you don't have issues with wettability. Yeah,
thankfully it's maybe more flexible than we think with that type of remove and rinse.
Right.
Do we want to go over some of the slides that we put together?
Yeah. So I was going to go ahead. Let me add one here that we can hit on real quick. And I just wanted to bring this up because another tool or another trick is, let me go up to this one first. So this is a patient with keratoconus with HOAs through their scleral lens. And hopefully you can see there are 2 aberrations on this chart that are above the red line. And everything else is pretty much right around the green line. This would be, I think we would all agree, a really good candidate for an HOA correcting lens, because if we added up all of the RMS values here, probably most of it's coming from those 2 bad peaks. And so if we can reduce those 2 bad peaks significantly, we know the patient's going to do great. On the other hand, here's another scan, which may have a total RMS of almost as much as the other one, but it's broken up now into like 4 or 5 different aberrations, which are all kind of equal. And if we corrected those 4 or 5 by reduce them into the green area, we haven't really solved any of them that much.
Right.
Like if we just reduce them by 50%, it's not as big an impact as in the other case here, where we might improve the vertical coma from 0.9-ish. If we get that down around 0.1 into the green subclinical area, that's a huge impact. So part of it becomes a matter too, I think, of when we take our patient and we're contemplating HOAs and we put them on the scan, what I'm looking for again is I'm looking for this kind of an image as opposed to this.
Yep. I would still attempt it with this. But you're right, we may not get as big of an impact.
Yeah. The first case, you're going to see 75% reduction in HOAs, probably. In this case, your RMS value, your RMS value in the first case is going to go from like 1.2 to like 0.35. That's what's happen.
That's
In
huge.
this case, your RMS is going to go from like 0.7 to 0.45,
Right.
which is still improved, but you're not going to get the wow factor with the patient as much as in the other case. And that's okay. It's just prepping your patient for what to expect.
Understanding.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. I have started really doing that as well. Like I had a patient who technically they're a candidate, and their scans looked like that. And I said, there's two ways to look at this. One, will it get better? Yes. Will you notice it getting better? I'm not sure. So clinically, I will see it. I will show an improvement. It's a success for me. Will you subjectively notice a difference? Maybe, maybe not. So is that worth the investment of the extra cost and visits out to see me for that risk? Yes or no? That's kind of like a discussion that I have up front, especially with a lot of these like self referrals, and say, yes, we definitely can go down this road. It will improve. Will you notice it in your real world? Because that's cool that I can see it and I can publish it and it's data, but they have to wear it for a whole year. So if it's no difference to them, like what's the point of doing all this?
Well,
so
if you think about it, it's kind of like taking someone with 3/4 of a diopter or cylinder and correcting a quarter of it.
Right.
So then they have a half left. Is that going to be noticeable? Are they going to be like, oh yeah, I can see so much better now that instead of a 3/4 of cylinder, I have a half diopter cylinder. That's not a big improvement as if I corrected them from 2 diopters of cylinder down to a half diopter. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I can really tell a difference. And that's kind of what we're doing when we take a patient with 0.7 aberrations and bring them down to 0.5. It's like correcting a quarter of cylinder in their prescription. How much is that going to be noticeable?
Yeah. So it just depends on the motivation. Like that patient, he's like, I don't care if I can see 10% better, I'm happy. I'm like, all right. Then you and I are on the same page.
I put a few slides together too, and just talking about, again, tying back to best practices in HOA correction in general, but maybe specifically to the pairing of these two technologies. This is actually Jame's data, speaking of publishing, that she had a total reduction of about 60% in her patients in her initial beta trial with the lenses. And that has consistently held up in my practice as well. So I usually tell patients about a 60% improvement.
So one little pearl about that, or Kate thing, just like how Jason said in the last slide, some of those, if you look like my case 2 OS, the only reason why I fit that patient is because this was the beta trials. Yeah. She was one of those people that went from 0.4 to 0.3. You know what I mean? So sometimes I feel like some of our data gets a little bit skewed that way. Yes, it's only a third correction because they are only starting from a small area and improving them a small amount, right? So yes, so that's kind of my own call out on my own data. This was like our very, very first few patients we did in Zenlens. I feel like now that my patient selection is better, looking at the people like Jason thinks are a better candidate, my results are usually over 70%.
So great. So good.
70%. But it's because I'm picking the patients that are actually need it, not just patients that technically qualify for a study. You know what I mean? So that's just my little call out on that data.
Yeah. And I don't think, sometimes it is 30%. Maybe they have a small corneal scar or something like that where, hey, we're just not going to get there. But most of these patients with that high coma or spherical aberration, that's a common pairing we see. They just get corrected so well. Just wanted to take a second again on the Ovitz. They have these pattern of reference dots, and in the Zenlens, there's the dots at the bottom. So you'd have the single dot on the right eye or the double dot on the left eye. And so we want the pairings of dots. They have the double dots at the 9 o'clock and the 12 o'clock. And of course, those may rotate, which is fine, but that's kind of the general orientation that you'd be looking for because unlike toricity, HOA correction is specific in that down has to be down. It can't be on the meridian. So the dot can't be up and be corrected the same. Down has to be down. And so as long as it's rotated with the 9 o'clock double dots in the quadrant of that, 9 o'clock quadrant, then you're going to be in good shape again with the dot on the bottom half of the lens. And it consistently lands there throughout your entire fitting, then you're good. This is an example of a patient that had moderate HOAs kind of through his eye. So again, based on what we've discussed now, he wouldn't be a super excellent candidate because we've got kind of a smattering of things, but he actually corrected super well. And I think it had to do, Nope. This is, sorry, jumping ahead. This is an example, Jason, of what you said, where this is not a great candidate. I was like, I can't remember my guy being, I thought he was worse than this.
Yeah.
This is an example of a not so great candidate. And like you said, you'd probably go from 0.7 to 0.45 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that I'm putting together, you can see he has KC there. He's pseudophakic. And here are his cases. So more classic, troubleshooting type patient that's going to do really well, because we have those problematic main criteria with the coma and the spherical aberration on that right eye. And that's primarily the one that was really fun to work with because we got such a huge improvement on him. Here's the color map of the deviation. And so when they describe HOA, they take a light ray, they send it through the eye, and then the aberrometer measures the deviation of each light ray as it comes back to the instrument. And so when it deviates in one direction, that gives us yellow or blue from a micron distance from the 0 point, and that's how we get these color patterns. And then you can see here's a comparison of his baseline reference lens to the corrected lens, and gold is corrected, and then the the blue and the red are the baseline non-HOA lens.
Mm-hmm.
And look at that massive, this was like a 90% improvement, which is maybe above average, but I'm not surprised when this happens. I'm like, look at this thing. This is amazing. And I always joke with the patient, like, look how good I am at this when I have nothing to do with it. I literally take a picture and then order it. When it comes to pearls, it's like, are there best pearls? Like, you point and shoot. This is just such fun stuff to work on.
The thing that is good there, though, too, is you notice that on all the small level aberrations that were there before, they're not really improved. And in a lot of ways, I think when they put the HOA correction on a lens, anything that's like in the subclinical level or less may not even be adjusted for in the final lens. And there's a reason, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to overcorrect it the opposite direction. So the biggest impact is going to be, again, on the small points. If you look at the low-lying points in your before and after, some of them aren't really improved because they don't need to be. They're already subclinical. They're already not an issue for the patient. And the emphasis is put on the ones that are outside of range.
Yeah, again, this was a great case, one of my earlier ones, and have had several. And, we occasionally send images back and forth to each other via email or chat, and about just like, look at this amazing technology. And, I recently had a gentleman that his KC was pretty bad, kind of a pellucity, low cone KC type eye. And we ended up getting him below 0.2 as well, like a 0.12 RMS. And his max K was like 76. I mean, it's just really amazing in the technology that we can do here. But so I think that kind of wraps up our points on HOA correction, unless Jamie, you have anything else to add, or Jason?
No, I think that's a good summary. I think the key components again are getting the lens to center the best you can, and that's going to mean using bioelevation as much as possible in the toricity in your lens. I think rotational stability. I think a good quality map, repeating it. Like, again, I always take at least 3 sets of data points for each patient. Like, obviously when we measure the aberrations, we would take 5 measurements to come up with a single composite average of those 5. But I do that 3 separate times to make sure that each set looks really similar to the ones before. So I know they're repeatable, because there is some intertest variability. And you don't want to just take a single scan that's got a high degree of inaccuracy to it or whatnot, and then use that to create your lens, because you're going to end up with a bad lens every time. So I think repeating it, I think, again, reviewing, don't just look at the RMS number itself, but look at what aspects of the aberrations and which ones make that up predominantly. And the higher the RMS number that is caused to be high by the fewest number of aberrations is your best scenario that you can recommend for your patients. And then just scan everybody and
find
these. Yeah. So
Before we wrap up for the day, Jamie, can you tell us why you're in glasses today?
Oh my gosh, I was going to mention that. You guys haven't even like asked me about my glasses. So, I hate wearing my glasses. So those of you that see me lecture, you've never seen this. So I actually am considering getting the Evo ICL. So this is the longest I've ever worn my glasses, which is 3 days since I'm like 12 years old. I have a pretty high prescription. So I'm a minus 750 myope with like 175 still. Obviously, because like the rest of us, I really am afraid to get LASIK, right? Because of all the patients that we see. My sister actually got the Evo ICL 2 years ago. She was minus 20. She said it's been like the most life-changing thing to ever happen to her. So I said, I'm going to try to do it this summer. But I have to wear my glasses for a whole week and I'm dying because I love my contact lenses so much. You guys know this. So I feel like I have to turn my head like fully to look anywhere. But I am likely going to have that done. So any
That's
pearls
exciting.
of wisdom that you have, Brooke, because I know you've managed a ton of Evos.
My one thing on Evo, and those of you listening, if you've also managed patients getting the ICLs, throw out your thoughts. But most of the time when our patients with the ICL, they walk out, I'm always like, you see better than I do. I guarantee it. I cannot wrap my head around how these minus 10s and minus 12s are walking out seeing 2015, 2010 sometimes. It's just, it's so life-changing for them. And every one of them is like, yep, it's worth every penny. And we were chatting about your eye parameters. You got a great anterior chamber depth, so there's lots of room in there, so you don't have to be worried about like angle issues, IOP changes, changes to your endothelial cell counts or premature cataract. So again, based on what we've talked about, I think you'll really love it. And even myself, I'm not I'm a moderate myope. I'm about a minus 450. If my anterior chamber depth was deep enough, I think I would do the ICL over LASIK too. Just the optics are so incredible. And going back to the optometry school, it has to do with like nodal points and like where light goes through. I think it's just because you put the optics where it actually is supposed to go versus, it's close with the cornea, but man, putting it right at the those refractive points inside the eye, the image quality is so good. Some halos for a short period for some patients, but man, like what an amazing opportunity to just, but if you choose to stay in contacts, I also support that. Just make sure you use fresh solution every day or your daily lenses. Never reuse your daily lenses, Jamie.
Oh my gosh. And then one thing I was like wondering though, because for a while I was like, I want to be a -1, but I'm like, maybe I don't. Maybe I want to be perfect. I don't know. What do you think, Brooke?
I think you should be perfect. You're too young. You're 20 years away from presbyopia.
No, I'm 20. Okay.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
But I know that. And then I was also thinking about when I can have it done. So, because, we travel a lot and lecture and things. So it gets a little complicated to see when you can get an eye surgery done where you don't see patients or don't have to get on an airplane or something. So
I think corneal swelling is usually pretty low. So I bet you could do it if you took some time off around like 4th of July or right after ICSC. I think you need a long weekend at most. Have it done on a Wednesday, see patients on Monday. You're good to go.
Yeah. We'll see. But yeah, here's my glasses. You guys will never see them again in your life. So
Cannot wait. So that's exciting for you. Can't wait to see what you decide to do. But I suppose that'll wrap up for today. Kind of a longer one, even though we said we were going to be short, so Jamie could eat lunch before her next patient. But sorry about that. Just keep your fasting going on.
It's fine.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
Bye.